carrots.
Will I die?
Yep, probably.
Grandma!
Happy Christmas.
You're still alive?
Yes, I think so.
Jesus, they're early.
Tony and Simon robbed the petrol station.
Oh, what fun.
We make tremendous criminals. I felt so good.
We're all getting old.
Well, we were getting old.
It's just one potato each.
Just one for everyone.
Did anyone watch the Queen's speech?
Well, she's clearly in some bunker set up, you know, filled with tins of baked beans and dog food.
Here's to the lives that we've shared. To our beautiful children. Our beautiful friends. May we rest in peace.
Hello there, welcome to my world of stuff. My name is Paul Mount. Unexpected video I'm doing this morning. Very quick video. I just wanted to talk about a film which I watched last night called Silent Night. This is a British, it's called a comedy, but I don't think I'd quite call it a comedy. But I wanted to talk about it because it's been, I think, unfairly criticised in some circles, especially by Mark Kermode, the British film critic who I respect enormously, but who also I find rather frustrating in his taste in some of the films that he champions. And some of the films he doesn't seem to quite get. He's not a big fan of blockbuster films, but he loves coming-of-age films and obscure foreign language films, which are fine, but I think he takes a strange sort of view with big crowd-pleasing films. Silent Night isn't a crowd-pleaser, but he took against it, and I just wanted to defend it here because I watched it last night and I was very impressed by it. And I'm going to work very carefully to avoid using the word enjoyed on this review, because it's not a film you can enjoy in a traditional sense of having. I had a really good time with that film because it's hella bleak. It is the bleakest film I've seen in some time. It's been compared with Lars von Trier's Melancholia. It seems to me to be more of a companion piece to a film called Perfect Sense, which came out 10 or 12 years ago, starring Ewan McGregor. That was a film about a disease spreading across the world which robs people of their senses one by one, their sense of smell, their sense of taste, and ultimately their sense of sight. It was a terribly bleak, terrifying film. And this film is in a very similar vein. It's interesting because it sets itself up as one thing and is clearly something else entirely. The premise of the film is that a group of old friends, old college friends, come together to celebrate Christmas at a country house belonging to the mother of one of the characters. They're a mixed bunch. They're not a particularly likeable bunch. They're all in their 40s, I guess. They've all got their insecurities. They've all got secrets from the past. They've all got their foibles. And they don't really get on very well, to be honest. So you do sort of wonder why exactly they were friends in the first place. But that's an issue, which I think is a fair one to make about the film. But they come together and you get hints in the first 20 minutes or so that something's not quite right, because Keira Knightley, who plays the mother of the family who are bringing everybody together, she's cooking Christmas lunch, but she doesn't have enough potatoes. There's only seems to be enough for one each. She hasn't picked up a dessert, so one of the characters goes out to get dessert from a local petrol station, and it transpires he's broken in. And there are a few little lines of dialogue which hint to something slightly more sinister. We actually find out what this sinister thing is about 23 minutes in, and that quite surprised me because I thought that the film might string it out a little bit longer. But it doesn't, because I suppose it doesn't need to. I think it's done enough to sort of set up the fact that all's not quite right here. The situation is that a toxic gas cloud is spreading across the world, wiping out every living thing in its path, and the government, in its wisdom, has issued everybody with a suicide pill, if you like, because the effects of the cloud are pretty horrendous, resulting in sort of a very painful death. And these people have gathered together to celebrate their last Christmas together because the cloud is due on Boxing Day. They're going to eat, drink and be as merry as they can before doing the deed the next day. It sort of brings you up short when you realise what the actual situation is. And I knew about the film, so I knew what the situation was. But I was slightly surprised that the film sort of blew its load, if you like, 23 minutes in. What then happens is a very interesting discourse into how these people either won't face what's coming to them because it's too terrifying, the inevitability of the fact they're going to die within 24 hours. You get to know a little bit more about them as characters and the things that happened in the past. And it's driven with a sort of black humour It's not a laugh out loud film. It has moments of sort of levity in it, but it's not a film. It is described wrongly as a comedy film, but it isn't a comedy film. It's very, very bleak and very black drama. And again, I'm trying to avoid that word enjoyed, but I was very, very impressed by it, having heard particularly Mark Commode's negative review, and I had not read any other reviews. I tend to sort of listen to what he says. I take it on board. I don't necessarily, I think any reviewer is just a reviewer. It's just their opinion. You have to judge for yourself. But I listen to what Mark Commode says. But as I said, I'm conscious of the fact that he has a slightly skewed view of certain types of films. I think he missed the point with this one a little bit. I mean, yeah, it's true that the characters aren't hugely likable, and you do wonder what it is that's brought them all together. Until you realise what's brought them all together, this is like The Last Sanctuary, if you like, because they're not particularly likable people, but they're not as hateful as I thought they would be. And I think as we build up towards the conclusion, it gets very, very dark. I mean, don't watch this film if you're a bit depressed, or if you're on your own, or if you've been a bit crushed by what's going on the last 18 months, because this won't make you feel any better about the world or yourself. It makes points, I think, about things like Brexit, government responsibility and government response, particularly at the moment when we've had the pandemic situation and everybody's got an opinion about how it's been handled. And I think this sort of skirts around that sort of issue a little bit by the suggestion that the government's answer is just to let everybody kill themselves. But in the face of this terrible inevitability, you sort of think, well, is that a bad decision to make on behalf of the people? But there's some very striking visuals in it. There's one particular scene towards the end of the film where the cloud is moving across the countryside, and this group are partying, they're dancing, they're drinking, they're having a good time. And then you intercut with scenes of this cloud sweeping through cities and sweeping through railway stations across the countryside, and nothing's alive. And it really brings home the horror of what's going to happen. And things really ramp up in the last half an hour. I'm not going to spoil the very ending of the film, apart from to tell you that there's no happy ending. What's going to happen happens. But there is something sort of disturbing about watching these characters doing the thing that will end their lives. The very ending of the film is ambiguous and is either a cop-out or is intended, I think it's intended to offer a little bit of hope that not, all is not as necessarily that bleak. But unfortunately, I think it comes across as a slightly lazy horror trope. I'm not going to say what it is here, in case you do take a punt on this film. Excuse me, I got a little bit sniffy. But I recommend this. If you're of a strong stomach and a hardy disposition, it's not a fun film. I mean, there's humour in it, don't get me wrong. There is some humour in it, but it's not a laugh riot. It's very bleak, it's very black. It's directed by Camille Griffin. I think it's her first feature film. It's got a very accomplished cast. As I said, Keira Knightley and Matthew Good play the lead couple. We've got familiar faces like Rufus Jones, who's appeared in various comedy series. Lucy Punch, who you'll probably know from the comedy series Motherland. I think the name is Sophie Desuru, who appeared in a very good horror film called His House last year, I think it is. And a very good cast generally of performers who make the most of characters who aren't really very likeable. The standout, though, is a young lad called Roman Griffin Davis. Now, he's the son of the director, and his two brothers play his other brothers in the film. He plays a young lad called Art, who questions things, and he worries, and he's online looking at the government advice about what's going to happen and what they need to do. But he questions, who's got the right to make these decisions for us. He wants to take his chances. And then he runs away from the house at one point, which leads to quite a horrific sort of sequence afterwards. He's great. I mean, he played Jojo Rabbit, or he was in Jojo Rabbit a couple of years ago, that Taika Waititi film, which I'm a bit about. But he's great in this. It's very, very adult performance for a young lad playing a young character. So it's one for the hardy. It's not one you're going to put on Christmas afternoon after you've had your lunch and watched The Queen, because it's not that sort of film at all. But if you can tolerate something which is very, very dark and very bleak, very nihilistic, doesn't offer a lot of hope for the future, I do recommend it. It's very, very accomplished. Don't be put off by any negative reviews you may have heard or seen. It's actually, you don't necessarily like the characters, but I think with Mark Commode on his radio show with Simon Mayo, their main problem seemed to be they didn't like the characters. Well, I know maybe you're not supposed to like them. I think that's possibly maybe what they didn't quite get. That they are insufferable, they are arrogant, they are self-centered, but then, you know, people are. And I think if you look beyond that and just look at the situation rather than the people who are in the situation, I think you'll get something from the film. As I said, not a film, and I say I've avoided the word enjoyed because it's not one to enjoy, but I admired the craftsmanship of it. I admired the storytelling. It's a very smart script, and I admired the tone of it. Sometimes it's, you know, I've said before, I like bleak sort of end of the world films, but there's usually some sort of triumph or some sort of victory at the end. But in this, if there is a victory, it's a sort of Pyrrhic one, if you like. Ooh. Hello, just popping back a bit later in the day because I realised, as usual, as I'm doing lately, I forgot to rate the film. I'm going to rate it a big fat 8 out of 10. As I said, not for everybody, not for those of a slightly depressive condition, but it's certainly worth an 8 of my time. Thank you. Anyway, that's me done. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Check out the film. It's available now on Amazon Prime. I think it's in some cinemas, but Amazon Prime is the best place to find it. Right, thank you for watching. Don't forget, like and subscribe, share, leave a comment down below, and until I see you next time, hey, keep kicking the stuff.